Welcome to CBC Weekly Talk. I'm Anastasia Lavrina. Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week runs from 14 to 19 January. Energy security strategies, green transformation take central stage as a global platform for accelerating the world's sustainable development. The World Economic Forum also returned to Davos this week. Azerbaijan intends to expand the horizon of opportunities in energy sector in order to contribute to Europe's energy security by being one of the regional green energy centers. What contribution can Azerbaijan make to solving global problems? All details in my program today. My guest now is Theodor Dechev, who is an associate professor from the Higher School of Security and Economics and also a member of the Association of Industrial Capital in Bulgaria. My another guest is Nicholas Waller, Chief Executive Officer and Editor-in-Chief of the International Affairs magazine and Global Media. Dear experts, hello and welcome to our program.
Hello, nice to see you.
Hello, once again. Thank you. Thank you so much. I have several questions, and I will start from the event which is taking place this week in the United Arab Emirates within the framework of the working visit of President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev to the United Arab Emirates on January 15. The state oil company and the Masdar company based in the United Arab Emirates signed an agreement on the joint development of the offshore wind energy and hydrogen projects. We know that Azerbaijan and United Arab Emirates cooperate not the first months and are willing to work closer on the development of the green energy in Azerbaijan and its future transportation to the European market. Theodor, I would like you to start our conversation today. What are the chances of Azerbaijan to become one of the regional green energy center?
Azerbaijan has a big chance to do that due to some circumstances which are unique for the geographical position of Azerbaijan. You know that wind energy had a big problem. It's the fact that wind doesn't blow permanently. Just in the same way like sun is not shining permanently, the same problem with the wind. Wind is not blowing permanently, and you see this creates a problem for energy producers. They cannot create so-called basic load for the energy grid through wind energy. But there are several countries in the world which are exceptions. Up to this moment, the big exceptions were Germany, Sweden, and Denmark, where in the North Sea and in these contact points between the Baltic Sea and the North Sea, there is a strong, permanently blowing wind stream. And that's the reason why the Germans were so brave to say that they will give up nuclear energy, because they had the possibility to create green basic load on their energy grid. It appears that luckily Azerbaijan had a similar position. There are regions, there are zones in the Caspian Sea where there is almost or permanent wind blowing stream. And this way, Azerbaijan energy producers can create basic load in the energy grid, which is a huge success. Of course, it's a big luck as well because of the geographic situation of the state, but it's not enough to have a nice geographic situation. You must have the knowledge, you must have the vision, and you must have the idea to do something. In our case, the good news, which come from the United Arab Emirates, are that there are new candidates for investors in this project. Not very long ago, Saudi Arabia declared strong interest in participating in this project for producing green energy. Now, the news from the Arab Emirates, they're well known. The extremely active energy diplomacy of Azerbaijan and personally of President Ilham Aliyev comes to new results which are very positive. And in this way, Azerbaijan had the big chance not only to supply Europe with a fossil fuel, which is natural gas. We know that European Union treats natural gas as a so-called transition fuel, but also Azerbaijan had the big chance to supply European market with green wind energy electricity. That's nice. Of course, Azerbaijan had got competitors. You know that not very long ago were announced two projects. One of them is the project for a submarine electricity cable, which had to connect the Greek region Attica with the Crete island, after that with Cyprus and with Israel. And another project where the Attica region had to be connected with Egypt in the region of the town city Barani.
Theodore, do you think that it means that Azerbaijan had someone who else can provide the green transformation and green energy to the world market, because the world needs additional sources?
Connectivity is an extremely positive thing. It's always better when we have not only such lines but grids. But anyway, there is competition. Of course, wise businessmen, they don't fear competition. They adopt competition as a chance, as a possibility to have such benchmark to know what is doing the competition and to be in good shape all the time. So the final answer of your question is that Azerbaijan had a unique chance to join the European electricity market with a product which is not only green, but also it is basic energy load, which is extremely important, and this is the big chance of Azerbaijan.
Nicholas, after this visit of President Ilham Aliyev to the United Arab Emirates, some experts are saying that this cooperation between two sides may have some geopolitical consequences to the world economy and global politics. Do you also support this claim?
I do. I think that one of the things that can be read from the visits of Aliyev to United Arab Emirates is that the world is moving on towards establishing competition for green energy, but on the strategic and geopolitical side, it's also moving on from the idea that Iran will end up being a major energy provider for Europe, for the rest of the world, due to the fact that ongoing protests and political instability continue in the Islamic Republic. It means that the long-term projection is that is relatively negative. And I think that by joining forces in interconnectivity, cooperation, Azerbaijan is now indicating that it sees itself as a stabilizer in the world energy market. It is politically stable. It is also geographically in an advantageous place. And so long as it can also cooperate with major energy producers like the United Arab Emirates, like Saudi Arabia, any of the Gulf states, it is the country itself is positioning itself as one of the top players for global energy security.
Nicholas, another very important question. Events which are taking place in the world indicate that countries need Azerbaijan more than ever, and it comes not only to the Arab world but also to the European Union, right?
Absolutely. If we were having this conversation, let's say 3-4 years ago, I would probably have a different opinion that Europe had locked itself and wrapped itself so tightly around its dependence on Russian energy supplies that Azerbaijan was sort of incapable of getting through to that market. And we all know that Europe is looking for alternative energy. It's also looking for strategic guarantees for those energy resources that needs to be provided. And it's looking for the long term. It's not looking for a sort of bandage approach towards what's going on in regards to the instability in the world. It's looking down the road at 5, 10, 15 years from now. And Azerbaijan is one of the few countries in the world that can actually provide for those long-term goals.
Tedor, we already started to speak about the partnership between Azerbaijan and United Arab Emirates, and you mentioned several countries. Coming back to the key element, key question, security in the global meaning, security in the Middle East, how do you think the cooperation between Azerbaijan and United Arab Emirates and increasing role of Turkey in the Middle East and in partnership with Arab world can bring more stability to our region, if it can?
That's really kind of the ultimate question from the area that I cover, which is, regional security and cooperation. Turkey has long been an important factor in what goes on in the Caspian region, the Caucasus, the greater Middle East, and Eastern Europe. Its role, as it stands right now, I think, it's sort of the nexus point, as it has been for many centuries, for all of these different political, economic, and social movements that influence places like Europe and the Near East. Can it bring stability? Well, I think that remains to be seen. In the last 30 plus years since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Turkey has sometimes played a role, and other times it has been a little bit absent or deferential to Europe and the United States. It does have the ability, it has a geopolitical clout, it certainly has the military capabilities, it certainly has the respect on the global level as a country that can actually bring about certain factors that will actually change the situation on the ground. I think that what is very important for Turkey to do is it's going to have to find a way to triangulate itself where it has good relations with the countries of the Caspian and the Caucasus, Europe and the Middle East. And it is a fine line to walk down because you have a lot of different clashing opinions, clashing national interests that don't always align with the ultimate goal, which is security for the region. But Turkey is indispensable. That is without a doubt, and it's indisputable that it is an indispensable country in the region. But I believe it's an open question. We have to see just how far along the stabilization process is with regards to exactly where we stand right now before we actually can see if Turkey ends up being the ultimate, let's say, arbiter in everything that is going on regionally.
Tedor, Azerbaijan has potential for transporting hydrogen along the salt and gas corridor. This is one of the uniqueness of this project, which can bring gas from Azerbaijan to Europe, but now the people are speaking about the transportation of hydrogen. How will it help to Europe?
Well, we are watching closely all the news which come from the management board of the Trans-Adriatic pipeline, because almost a year ago it was announced that the Trans-Adriatic pipeline, which is the last section of the Southern Gas Corridor built yet, that it could be used for transporting of hydrogen or of mixtures between hydrogen and methane gas. Yet the management gives not very detailed information, and that is natural because they're still surveying the issue. But it is almost clear that the pipeline could be used for transportation of hydrogen. But the other very important issue is not only about transportation, but also about producing hydrogen. Here you see the synergy between the export of green energy from Azerbaijan to Europe and the production and transportation of hydrogen, because it doesn't deserve the effort to produce hydrogen with dirty energy sources. Valuable is the green hydrogen, which is produced with the help of electrolyte dissociation of water, for example. And here we have clean energy coming from the offshore wind mills somewhere in the Caspian Sea, and green hydrogen, which could be produced with the help of this green energy. Of course, there are other possible contributors too. For example, Greece is providing their project called White Dragon, which is prepared exactly to export hydrogen through the Trans-Adriatic pipeline. So the most valuable thing here is that producing hydrogen, you have the unique possibility to stock electricity, to stock energy. Up to this moment, you knew that it was impossible to create a reserve of electricity. If you produce your electricity, you must connect it in parallel in the grid, and that's all. Well, when you have the possibility to produce hydrogen, you can make a reserve of hydrogen, you can put it in tanks, and in a necessary moment to use it back for producing electricity. So here you see this strategy, which is adopted by the Azerbaijani state, is very wise, because Azerbaijan created a huge infrastructural device, which is the Southern Gas Corridor. Azerbaijan is exporting, well, not exactly green, but absolutely acceptable as a transition fuel through this pipe. And Azerbaijan is ready to provide green electricity, and with this green electricity can be produced hydrogen, which could be transported through the Southern Gas Corridor. You see the synergy of all these activities. And I think that Azerbaijan will be successful in this project.
Tedor, you raised a very important issue, producing and transportation of green energy. For production of this green energy requires a lot of support from the international community as well. And during the meetings which we observed these days in Abu Dhabi and also in Davos, the President Ilham Aliyev raised the issue of partnership and cooperation with many international companies which can contribute. And again, talking about green energy, we know about big potential existing on the liberated lands of Azerbaijan in Karabakh and East Zangezur. So, Tedor, could you tell us more about the role of the international companies and international community in the development, producing of green energy in Azerbaijan, in particular on the liberated lands?
Of course, we have the very clear example with the photovoltaic plant, which is built by British Petroleum, by BP, in the region of Jabril city, I suppose, which is exactly in the liberated 7 regions of Azerbaijan. This is a very clear example how a company which was specialized in the past in fossil fuels now turns its efforts and, of course, its financial and expert resources in another direction. And the BP plant in Jabril is number 1 example. Number 2 example is the issue we discussed already, the idea of offshore producing of electricity through wind turbines. And here we have a list of candidates for investing in this project. But of course, Azerbaijan needs investment not only in producing green energy. Azerbaijan needs investment in the whole chain of infrastructure, because I can give a simple example. Bulgarians are extremely happy with the interconnector which comes from the Trans-Adriatic pipeline and which connects the Greek city Komotini with the Bulgarian city of Stara Zagora. And we have 3 billion cubic meters natural gas per year through this pipeline. We can get 5, but this means that we must build another compressor gas station in the city of Komotini. Here is the role of the international partners of Azerbaijan. For example, Bulgaria for sure have to be such a partner and to invest in such a project which is absolutely comparable with the Bulgarian scale of work. So Bulgaria can invest in such a station and to make the interconnector much more productive. Instead of 3 billion cubic meters per year, to transport 5 billion cubic meters. On the other side, it is absolutely clear that sooner or later, the Southern Gas Corridor, and especially the Trans-Adriatic pipeline, must extend their capacity. They must extend their productivity. And this means that, again, such consortiums of international companies, together with state institutions from the European Union, have to invest in this thing. Because if we want to have something coming through the pipeline, we must make the pipeline much more productive. So there are different decisions, additional compressor stations, even doubling the trace with another pipe, and so and so. But all this, it's not only obligation of the Azerbaijani side. Everybody has to participate in this. And I think that this is absolutely clear both to the European experts, to the European Commission, and to the companies, state or private owned. And I'm absolutely sure that very soon we'll hear additional good news, just like the case of the good news from the United Arab Emirates. People want to invest in producing. People, for sure, are ready to invest in transport as well.
Nicholas, at the meeting in Davos, President Ilham Aliyev stressed the importance of putting an end to the illegal exploitation of Azerbaijan's natural resources in the territories of the countries where the Russian peacekeepers are temporarily deployed. Are the countries in the world and international community ready to support Azerbaijan in this quite important mission?
The answer is both yes and no, and I'm very sorry for having to give you kind of a little bit of an on-the-fence response in that regard. But I think there is a growing consensus that is building that despite a lot of lobbying and publicity that is directed towards the situation in Karabakh, that there is a sense that Azerbaijan is doing what it can to stabilize the situation there and to begin the reconstruction project, as we discussed the previous time that I was with you. That there is a growing sort of sense that when Azerbaijan has full control and full authority and the full ability to have access to the areas that have been liberated and the areas that should be under Azeri control, that this is generally a net positive. However, there still remain quite a few countries, some of them relatively influential and and several of them all in Europe, that are predisposed to being against just about anything that comes from Baku in terms of proposals for stabilization, for finding some sort of a peace agreement, and ultimately having access to areas where there are natural resources, where people have the right to return, and essentially carrying on and furthering the development of Karabakh. At this particular point, I would say that the international community needs more time to come to a general consensus where that would actually be something that would be able to be roughly a fait accompli, that the areas where that have been liberated but are areas that are
Nicholas,
currently where...
but do you agree with the statement that Azerbaijani ecologists should get an access to the lands of Azerbaijan where the Russian peacekeepers are dislocated now?
I'm not 100% convinced of that, because you always have the variable of the peacekeepers. They're a third party to what has been a very long conflict, and they're a third party that has not always been relatively neutral. In the events in any conflict, when you have peacekeepers involved and they act as a sort of buffer between the two conflicting sides, they're always a factor in what goes on the ground. And until I see more evidence, despite the public statements that have come out in the last few days, until I see more evidence that the peacekeepers are going to act in a neutral way, which means granting Azerbaijan the right to territories that legally which are legally and internationally recognized as a part of Azerbaijan, I'm not going to be fully convinced that the process will actually be carried through.
Yes, that's quite a difficult question, but still, if the European Union, especially European countries, are willing to have more active cooperation with Azerbaijan, in the case with the green transformation, then when it comes to ecology and the protection, the European Union should be firstly interested to support Azerbaijan to guarantee the legal exploitation of the sources on the territory where the Russian peacekeepers are deployed, rather than to continue this illegal exploitation which we observed within the last 3 decades. And in my understanding, it will also contribute to the establishment of long-lasting peace, what we are working on for about 2 years and even more.
Right, and I do agree with you on that. But here we get into the, down into the trenches of Brussels bubble politics. And to essentially make the long story short for everybody, this is where you have a lot of a lack of effort by the European Union. And it has been what has plagued the European Union for roughly 30 years, certainly the last 20 years, when it has tried to become a kind of global entity and a global player. One of the issues that the European Union has in wanting to have, it does have interest. It does have an idea of wanting to project its influence in the world, but as we all know, the European Union is not a country. It is a political and economic bloc that is actually voluntary for the most part. And to actually get them to commit to moving in one direction or the other is sort of the $1 million question. And in a case like what is going on in Azerbaijan, I mean, illegal exploitation of natural resources, and allowing Azerbaijan to actually have access to territories that legally belong to it, that is what really complicates all relations with Brussels, because it requires them to actually have a position and then actually advance that position, and furthermore project that position publicly and to the international community. The European Union, for the most part, throughout its history over the last couple of decades, has been absolutely terrible at that. And in this case, I don't see that much of a change of approach when it comes to Azerbaijan. It will take more pressure, take more time. It'll take more convincing of people in Brussels who are generally predisposed not to be convinced, but always to sort of sit on the fence. And the ultimate goal for the Azeri foreign ministry and its diplomatic missions in Brussels will be to try to get the European Union to actually take a position that will be long-lasting and sustainable. And this is where we sort of always come to when it comes to dealing with the politics, as I said, the down in the trenches sort of politics of Brussels.
Theodore, another very important issue, which is also being discussed in the forum in Davos, it's a middle corridor. It's a connectivity transport project, which is one of the key elements of the global agenda for today. And Azerbaijan offers to contribute to the development and operation of this very important global project titled Middle Corridor. By meaning of contribution, Azerbaijan also say about Zangezur corridor, which can be part of this big global project. But we see the position of Armenia. With Nicholas, we already started to speak about this issue, and the position of Iran, who is not 100% support this project. Do you think that the position of Armenia and Iran can somehow affect the process to make Zangezur corridor possible and operated in the near upcoming years?
Things here are very simple from one point of view and not so simple from other point. From the point of view of pure logistics, it's absolutely clear that after the collapse of the northern corridor, after all the ports in the world stopped serving ships which come from Russian ports, when the insurance companies reject to insure, and especially the reinsurance companies reject to reinsure loads which are transported from Russian ports, everything this meant that the northern corridor is clearly closed, and that the big chance for the east-west communication, mainly European Union, China, is the corridor which comes through Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan. This is an issue which cannot be disputed, and it's a lack of time to oppose such a thesis. On the other side, the Armenian side, from my point of view, but I think that from the point of view of a pretty big number of people, makes a huge mistake, because in November 2020, Armenia lost the Second Karabakh War. Armenia lost the 44 days Karabakh War. The illusion that the Armenian army always will defeat the Azerbaijani army was totally destroyed. And it sounds strange, but the Armenian side came out of this situation with gains, because the tripartite communication from 9th and 10th of November clearly says that all the communications in the Southern Caucasus region will be re-established, and all the boundaries are going to be opened for absolutely isolated country like Armenia, which was isolated both from the Turkish border, both from the Azerbaijani border, and they had as a communication channel only Iran, which is not the best party in the eyes of the civilized world. In this case, the Armenians had to be extremely happy and to say that they have almost won the war, because they have gains after the war and not losses. But the approach of the Armenian public opinion was absolutely the opposite, and it won't be a slogan or something overestimated if I say that this way of operating was irrational. There is no rational motive to stop the establishing, and if I must be much more exact, the re-establishing of the Zangezur corridor. Because finally, if the Zangezur corridor works, the middle corridor will become almost twice much more productive. And Armenia will have gains. They will have transfer taxes. They will get money from the exploitation of the Zangezur corridor. In the situation in which is economical situation in which is the Armenian state, I don't see any single reason to give up from the possibility to get this money. But the Armenian side says that everybody who speaks about such corridors is a national traitor. That's extremely stupid. Excuse me for the formula. If the Armenians want to create a much more sustainable state with a much more affluent society and with a better living standard, first they must live in cooperation with their neighbors, and second, they must use the possibilities which the situation gives them. And here the situation simply gives them the possibility to get money just for saying one single yes. But they say no.
Exactly. Yeah, we see the destruction action of the Armenian government, and we have just a couple of minutes of left. So, Nicholas, just the final question to you also about Zangezur corridor and the position of Armenia and Iran. You already spoke about the Brussels format of negotiations, and we know within the last meeting in Prague, two sides also recognize the territorial integrity of each other, relying on the Almaty Declaration from 1991, and also agreed to work on unblockage of transport links. But unfortunately, we don't see any construction action on behalf of Armenian side. What do you think about this?
Well, I want to sort of reiterate what Fyodor was saying, which is he's absolutely right. Since 1991, the Armenian position has really not changed, which is that any sort of adjustment in the policy regarding Karabakh and also security regionally is seen as being that you're a national traitor or you're betraying the people of Armenia. As he said as well, and I agree with him, they continuously say no to just about everything. That includes seeing the benefit of actually being interconnected with the international community. And that would be the first time that they would be able to do that in their modern history if they were just a little bit more mild in their approach to how security and cooperation can be established in the South Caucasus, but beyond that as well, too. I think it's rather telling, and I've said this for quite a long time now, that the only other two states that really echo or assist Armenia with its narrative on a regular basis would be Iran and the Russian Federation. You could also include France in that group as well too, but they're a little bit more subtle in the way that they do that. And if you look at what the situation is in the world today, if those are your two partners who are helping you to project exactly what you want as a nation and what you want as security, what you want for cooperation, and ultimately what your future is going to be for the citizens of your country and the standard of living that they have and the aspirations that they have, those are not exactly two nations that are going to be able to project a positive image for you, particularly in the case of Iran. But Armenia continues, and for all the signals and the signs that we see now, they're going to continue to use the two countries that they have for the last 30 years as their main cheerleaders on the international stage. And quite obviously, with the situation with the war in Ukraine, Russia has lost a lot of its audience in the developed world. And Iran has for decades been not exactly the ideal partner for projecting any kind of positive image or outlook for the future. So I don't see a lot of change in the Armenian position coming. And unless there's a fundamental repositioning and recalibration of society's view of what it means to actually have stabilization and cooperation, unfortunately, we're going to be locked in the cycle that we've been in for 3 decades now.
Right. Yes, we see some changes in the attitude of the global world towards our region, but unfortunately, in the policy of the Armenian government, we don't see much changes. They are speaking about these changes, they speak about the peace, but they don't do anything to contribute to the peaceful development in the situation of the region.
Right, and what I would say to further what you're just mentioning, and you're 100% right about that, is that on the ground, on the street, in the cafes, in conversations with people in villages and in cities in Armenia, if you go around and you talk to them, they are really, whether or not they agree with whichever government is in power at that particular time, the whole of society is essentially a wartime society. They see no other manner in which to function, to pass legislation, and to develop as a society. And this has ultimately very much hindered their ability to develop as a small and relatively isolated country, just by the nature of its geography. But when you look to its left and you look to its right, you look to the west and you look to the east, just immediately on its borders, you see that the standard of living, the style of living, the opportunities for employment in Azerbaijan and in Georgia are far greater than in Armenia. But it's a very simple calculation, and when you try and present this to general society in Yerevan or with the diaspora, it just simply leads to nothing. It comes back to the idea that you're betraying the Armenian people in these. So if that element in the society does not change, then any progress towards anything that would be cooperation or security guarantees and ultimately peace, which is what everybody wants, that will fall on deaf ears, and it simply will not progress to anywhere from where we are now.
Right. Dear experts, we are running off our time, but thank you so much for joining the program today. It was a pleasure to talk with you and discuss such a relevant and important questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you. Just to remind you, watch CBC Weekly Talk. I'm Anastasia Lavrina. Stay with us and see you in the next edition.